their chores done, or whether they just procrastinate about everything and let it pile up. And what we're really struggling to, I guess, have come to fruition is an accountability of, I made a commitment to A, I need to follow that through, I have the time, I have the capability, I'm smart enough, I just choose not to. And then how do we teach them if they just don't meet the expectation that they set for themselves? They said, okay, I committed to doing this by such and such a time, and just, piddled the whole week away, and then there's really no consequence for it. So,
I'd like to speak to the consequence aspect of
or I
that,
mean, consequence is kind of a heavy word, but
consequences are real and true. I mean, if you don't show up to work, you don't get a paycheck.
well, that's kind of where we're going with it, is if you don't complete the work thing on time, you lose your job.
For instance, and I'll just speak to Erica's class just as an example. If you have a kid that has drugged their feet, didn't get their research done, you had huge research projects. My child is in Erica's class. He struggled with aspects of research just because it is self-guided. You really do have to pull the information out yourself. Your teacher's not going to hand it to you. She's not going to talk to you about it. You have to go and find it, pull it out, and make something of it yourself. That's a huge skill to have. If at times you were behind on where you were supposed to be judged by your teacher, the consequence could be something as simple as, I'm sorry, you don't get to join the mid-littles for music right now. You misused your time.
That's what I'm looking for. Do things like that happen? That's what I wanted to know.
They're reasonable consequences that are communicated individually to that child.
They're relevant.
They're relevant. They're not made examples of in front of their classroom. It's very individual communication between Erica and that student. I'm sorry, Sam, but I saw that you didn't get as far as you could have, and you were daydreaming a little bit, and so we're going to move on, but I need you to give me that extra 10 minutes there. And that's what you want. You want the consequence without the ridicule.
Absolutely.
You want the consequence there that is established between teacher and child, and it's not a social consequence where they're isolated, that they feel embarrassed or ashamed, but they actually realize, oh, that expectation's still there, and I still have to meet it, or else I'm not going to get to go do some other fun things that I look forward to in my life. And she's really good at picking that out.
Like, is that like Wyatt's class? Like, is that
knowing your child,
like a choice that he's making, and this is the consequence?
And I'd say the bonus of that is that so rarely, if ever, do I actually have to say to any of the kids in my class, and I know with Erica as well, I mean, it doesn't happen often, because they do it for themselves, because they have that work ethic installed in themselves, and everybody else is doing it, so they want to, get their stuff done too. So
I bet each of us could come up with with 3 consequences we gave a kid this week. If we sat here and they would have been pertinent to the information and to that child, because we know them as people. We know who's going to break down and cry with this or that, and who just needs to be. I have to admit, sometimes I do use public ridicule.
No, but it's effective for certain personalities, and the trust is inherent. I hope that you recognize from the report cards how well these ladies know your kids, how well they know their strengths, how well they know their weaknesses, how well they know their personality traits, and that comes in as an essential tool in our everyday lives to effectively teach your kids and also teach them what a consequence is. And how to say to that child, I know you don't really care about music, so I'm not going to use that as a reason not to send you to music. You don't really care if you go to music anyway, but I do know that you really do like going to Miss Stacy's, science class. I mean, there's all sorts of variables there that we can reach for. Or giving them an opportunity. If you do well in this assignment, I will give you the opportunity to visit the mid-little classroom or the Excel classroom to show what you've done. I mean, there are small motivating tricks, and sometimes it is. Like, for instance, my son, you can tell him to do something, and he's going to go, okay, and then he's going to go back to doodling. But if you say to him in front of his classmates, Sam, it's time to get busy, he's like, you're supposed to know your kids. You're supposed to know your kids in your classroom. You guys know your kids. And these ladies do a good job with the appropriate consequences, hopefully, so that it's not, there's nothing more unpleasant than watching a kid drag their feet. You feel, as a teacher, you feel somewhat like a failure. Was that not an inspiring enough assignment? Did I not think about this kid and what they needed? Why aren't they? And that sort of investment is great, because then the kid gets it, They realize that the teacher really does want to help them succeed, and they don't fight that. I mean, they really do work with you. It's a beautiful thing. So I would say that, you know, in that report card, hopefully, that's the one thing I saw when I got mine for both my kids, is these ladies know my kids really well, and they also will then know how to reach them when they're dragging their feet and when they're having a hard time getting something done. And what is it about this that you don't like? Do we need to change the format of the product? Is it that you like the research but you don't want to make the poster? You know, how do we work with you on the value of what you're doing?
And
Something
a lot of
that-
times it's where they're sitting, you know. Do
Yeah.
we need to find a new spot for you? Here's a quiet spot, here's a cozy spot, or
Yeah.
Something I noticed on the report cards was the same things that we struggle with at home were the exact same that y'all put on the cards. I mean, it lined up perfectly. I was like, yep, that's my child. I had no doubt that we didn't, I knew that was my kid. So that was good.
From my perspective, I don't think that Erica was right, or Miss Erica, about me being a leader. I was like, from your perspective.
But that's leadership too. Kayan has this amazing ability to bring a cheery, mischievous sweetness to the classroom that I think kids look up to.
I hope he starts to see himself as a leader because he is
a
he's
leader.
a great leader.
I said that to him today, didn't I? That very thing. Thank you for your
Thank you for being a guiding light, I think.
guiding light. That's how I said it, yeah. And I don't want you to think I'm going to take back what I said about ridicule. I had one specific little boy in mind who sometimes needs some positive peer pressure in his world. So,
Besides your son.
oh, that too.
It works.
It works. Sam will tell you.
But that just goes to us knowing or finding out at least exactly what your kid needs in a consequence, a due date, whatever. We don't have one blanket thing that goes for every student. Every single kid has a different plan in the school.
And I want to say too that we make mistakes. I made 2 significant mistakes this week that I'm willing to talk about. And a few others. Today, speaking of consequences, I got word from someone else that the reason Miss Stacy's room was left such a mess was because of this particular girl. So I marched right on over and gave her my thoughts and feelings and sent her in to clean up the room, and you don't talk back to me. So she turned right around and did it, and later, very sweetly and politely came up to me and said, I actually didn't make any of that mess, Miss Jackie. I apologized and thanked her for
I don't really believe her though.
Not super clean.
and thanked her for cleaning it up. And then I had a really cool thing. Is it okay if I talk about Livy? Sure. The other day, right before novel, I just sometimes throw in, I don't know, silly things, and I asked Livy to show me how to add fractions with unlike denominators, so just kind of checking in on her. And I didn't mean for it to be public, but everybody kind of silenced, you know, when you say the wrong thing at a party. And poor Livy didn't have, and it actually speaks to a couple of things. One is what can happen to some little personalities when they're put on the spot.
She froze.
She froze.
She said my brain froze.
And you know what? And I felt bad, and we tried to sort of cover it up, but it was too late. The damage had been done. But the best part of it was today. Did she come to me, or was it yesterday? Afterward, the day after. So I don't remember what it was. But she, in a very public situation, came to me, and I hope you coached her on this, and I want you to know how beautifully she did it. She said, I need you to know that what you did the other day made me freeze, and I can't think in that situation, and I just, all I could do was say, Olivia, I know, I knew I messed up right then, I'm so sorry, and I got the opportunity to apologize to her about 10 to 15 times today, but the best part of it was her confidence to come to one of us and speak her mind,
Right.
so thank you.
It turned into a great opportunity opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, and we all make mistakes, and I say that all the time. I probably make the most mistakes.
If you didn't, that would be trouble for them for the rest of the world.
Or if you didn't.
Yeah. But that's just life, and that's humanity, and wouldn't we all be better off if we allowed ourselves to make mistakes sometimes, you know? So, good job, and thank you for the way she handled that and you handled
And
it.
she didn't come back and tell me that she talked to you.
Yeah, she did it very beautifully.
So it was just sort of a done deal.
Done deal, yeah. She took care of it
That was
with
it.
her chin up and
Great.
sweet little eyes looking right into mine. And what a life skill.
Yay.
Something's bugging you, talk to someone else. That was a positive situation.
That's something that I really enjoy about the school is that you have got courage into paying to do it. Something you really, really brought him out of the shell. It's wonderful. He can be a leader.
I think they're learning to be really good advocates at a very young age. I have little ones that come into my world and, why can't we ever have science in here, Miss Stacy? Why do you come to my classroom? I want to have it in here. I'm glad that if you only see me once a week in class, for me to come teach you for an hour and a half once a week, that you feel strongly enough to come into my classroom, put your feet down and say, I want to be in here. You know, like, and they don't see me every day. I'm not their Miss Erica or Miss Erin for their young world. And I remember how I felt when I was a little kid, and it was just my teacher. I didn't know what went on down the hall. I didn't care, and I wasn't going to go looking for it. But your kids wander around this place with purpose. Wander and purpose are two opposites, but they do. They advocate for themselves beautifully, and they can talk to any of us. So if there's ever a time when they're feeling stress or anxiety, there's a lot of different personalities they can tap into. And it might be me sometimes, it might be Elizabeth, sometimes it might not be the person that they're with all the time. But they're learning to be beautiful advocates for themselves and very articulate. And especially if there's a problem. You know, I had one of the littles come to me today, and they were upset because one of the bigs was in their world and they weren't sure why. You know, and then not even an hour later, 3 older kids came to me and said, I need you to talk to this younger child for me. She keeps running by and poking me and bashing me and in certain places that she shouldn't, and she doesn't know that, and she's little, and I don't know what to do, and there's 2 others, me too, you know, and I said, okay, well, you know, do you want me to talk to him, or would you no, we'd like for you to talk to him, because if it's all 3 of us, and we're older, you know, we don't want to make her cry, we don't want to embarrass her, so I just went straight to the little girl and said, this has got to stop, you can't beat the older kids with a fist. You can't poke them with your pencil as you run by. They are bigger kids, but they still feel. And she was like, yep, okay, I won't do it anymore. You're right. And big smile on her face and everything. And I think that's really cool. I mean, I think that the young kids get it. And to them, this is normal to be around older kids and different age kids and have a variety of teachers that they can choose to communicate with and visit. I love it when they visit. You know, it's wonderful. So I think that's part of this community. That's part of what we can do differently. And definitely I value it, and it takes time to build that, but the little ones come into this world and they already own it. I mean, they don't have to learn about it. The older ones that we get transferring in or just coming from different places, it takes them a little while. And Nancy, you guys know, with your kids, I mean, it takes a little while to figure it out. The younger ones, this is what their reality has always been. You know, they walk into school confident and strong and get right to it.
It's an extension of family.
And
Definitely.
one thing that I didn't speak to earlier that I'd really like to is that the 3 of us ladies, at least once a week, bring all 3 of our classes together for some sort of an academic focus. We do it also for PE and reading, of course, they're always welcome to combine, but once a week we come together for an academic focus to really give the older kiddos a chance to lead academically and to give the youngest kiddos just kind of a taste of what they're going to learn and give them something to look forward to, and those in between to really take advantage of the skills that they've got and start to make connections to where they're going to take them, and that is
So cool.
so cool. So
Can you give us a brief example of what that means? You
Absolutely, yeah. So it usually happens on Friday afternoons, and this past Friday, Miss Steph and Miss Erin and I, all three of our classes came together and did an activity on where the wild things are. And Miss Stephanie read the book aloud with all the kids watching intently, and you know, for some of them that's probably the 70th time they've heard that book, but something about that book is magic. And at the end of it, kiddos in my class were asked to write a summary of the story that begins with a topic sentence and ends with a conclusion, and includes 3 detailed sentences in between. And at the same table, there's some tiny kiddos, you know, kindergartners, and their task was to draw a picture from the book that shows their favorite scene or event. And then Miss Stephanie's kiddos were asked to write 2 detailed sentences that support some sort of a detail that happened in the story as well as their favorite part. And so in that way we're able to differentiate, which is a fancy word for giving an assignment to the ability level of the student, differentiate for all 3 class levels, but still have them all working together and just watch the magic of having this adorable little 4-year-old girl sit at the same table as an 11-year-old, you know, and them discussing the same story and getting so much out of an activity. And in no way is someone who can't even write a sentence yet belittled by someone who's, you know, spelling words adventure and journey and things like that on their own. So.
And it's cool too, because being with the older kids, some of our youngest are encouraged to write words and write things about the book that they enjoyed that they may not have done if it was just tiny club, just our kindergartners. So it's really cool that the big kids kind of get to lead and encourage the younger kids to kind of step it up and challenge themselves. So that's another really fun experience.
So I hope that your kiddos come home with some sort of a story and that you're not terrified, like, why is my 9-year-old doing 5-year-old work? We do give them the same experience, but certainly at their level, if not slightly above, so that everyone is striving for something great in themselves and enjoying themselves while they do it. And also, our class sizes are so small that we as teachers on a daily basis get to interact with our individual students so much, but the kids can get bored of sitting at a table with the same 4 kids. So bringing in all this new energy and new personalities and you know, different things in people, I think that that's a really fun way to keep the energy levels positive and still academic. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that, but that's a pretty magical thing that your kiddos get to do.
These guys do it so beautifully. I've just been so impressed. This is something that has developed over the years, but this semester has just really started to rock. And it's amazing to see. You guys should check it out.
Mrs. Erica, how about group dynamics and individualism within just a certain age group? How do they, because I know you're working with a whole bunch of different levels and abilities.
That's a great question, Kelly. So just like differentiating with a big group of 30 kids from 5 to 10, even within our classes, we have similar skill levels, but still kids who in math are more fluent, or, you know, it becomes easier to them, or they have a greater understanding than someone who might have a stronger background in reading. So with each lesson that we plan, we try to take the time to consider every ability, every different approach, which is why, Jen, I told you don't ever feel like you're going to mess anything up, because when I'm teaching something, I try to come at it from as many different sides as possible. You know, someone who's going to learn better sitting quietly in the corner and writing about it, someone who's going to want to be in a group with 4 other kids and talking about it while they're building a model of it. So within each class and within each subject, and even day to day, I try to provide an extension to the main concept that we're talking about. So, for example, today we were drawing multiplication pictures. And so with each picture, you're drawing, maybe the multiplication problem is 6 times 2, so you're drawing 6 squares across and 2 rows of those squares to get the answer of 12. And their assignment was to find as many different pictures you could draw that would show equal rows of 12. Well, for someone like Chloe, she's like, all right, here it is, and it's beautiful and it's perfect, and now what? And so then she can start exploring prime numbers in that way and trying to give her bigger numbers that are going to have a lot more different pictures. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, and how about the same question but on a social level?
On a social level, that is something that we as teachers, when we're going into training to be teachers, they don't talk about because there's no answer for that. But I can say that I try to take it on an individual, day-to-day level while trying to help kiddos through their problems by modeling good problem solving, but without putting so much of a focus on it that it takes away from our academic day. And so if you guys ever have something that we're not aware of or something that we can help more within these walls, believe me, we'll do everything that we can to help. But when it becomes more of a focus than our academic day, that's when I as a teacher have to do the best I can and model good problem solving, but bring the focus back to, all right, so we've talked about it, we've come up with some possible solutions, we've got smiles on our faces, now let's go back and draw some multiplication pictures.
Well, and opportunities for regrouping with kids. You know, they're not always placed in the same partnerships, the same groups, the same dynamics. I mean, those are switched a lot, and it's an effort to really kind of hone those social skills that we say, yeah, your choice might be that you want to work with 2 girls, but you get a guy and a girl today. You know,
They're not always guiding their interactions. There are getting mixed up.
Oh yeah.
Oh
for
yeah,
example,
no,
I
they're
have-
not allowed to choose that section of their lives. We give them lots of choice, but there are more,
We use
more
every
than that.
tactic.
Yeah.
That's just best practices.
That's
Different grouping options are just best practices, and and I check in with these guys, you know, are you grouping them in different ways?
Sometimes I forget. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been doing the same thing for like 2 weeks. Thank you for reminding me.
Actually, today, I had the opportunity to grab one of our older students who I knew would be up for the task, because you just know those types of people, and say, so-and-so needs a new perspective, a new group of friends, needs a breath of fresh air. Could you please invite her to sit with you at lunch today? Oh yeah, sure. You know, so if we're aware of some of that stuff, we can throw in all sorts of different tactics that honestly, when it comes to little beings, are very effective. You know, as long as the kids trust us and parents trust us and come to us about it. I don't know if that helps answer your question or not, but we're there for those things. Or any ideas that you have that we haven't come up with are available too. I brainstormed for quite a while with this child today, just in an effort to get some positive aspects rolling that will help spark a new excitement and just a new zeal for the outlook. You know, so truly our jobs are to help serve the whole child, and that sounds like a fluffy educational term, and it gets thrown around out there. It gets said at in-services at schools across the country, who then launch into the school year, sitting down by 8:15, lining up for lunch, making them be quiet at lunch, and then don't actually follow through with it. We take it very seriously, the whole child. You know, responsibility-wise, socially, motivationally, academically. It's a big bunch of balls to juggle, but that's what we love to do.
And so because you love it, you're not exhausted by it.
Right. Unless it keeps the family time. That's when I want to run away.
That's why we have things like Mother's Day break.
Question.
Yes,
Part of the, I mean, I absolutely love the independence that I feel like at least I see in my son, and the free thinking and the choices. But I'm curious if you have an emphasis ever too on them displaying respect. I mean, choice. There's a fine. Make a choice, and then if you want, this here and that. But then also when you need to respect your teacher, and now's the time to listen to what I'm
probably the one that marks.
do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. No,
And I
that's-
hope
that's
that's like a,
constant
yeah.
in any setting that we are, whether we're with all of our classes or it's me with just my kiddos doing calendar or
Which is
whatever.
great.
Yeah,
And I
they're-
love
and
that,
they-
like with Wyatt, it's like I love his free thinking and the choices he makes. But then you can get into a situation where I'm like, you really don't have a choice with that.
Yeah.
You have to
there's
listen to
lots
me.
and lots.
Right? And he's at that age, I think, where that's kind of pushing the boundaries,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and they're trying to figure out exactly like where they stand.
do you ever discuss that?
Oh
Or
yeah, actually
You do?
I
Okay.
discussed it with
I
Stephanie's
understand
class.
sometimes Jackie makes people clean up other people's messes.
I actually
Could be a
did
prime
this with
example.
Stephanie's class, it was probably a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And do you
talk
think
about,
that at his age, that's kind of where you're going to see a lot of that?
Exactly,
I agree.
developmentally. And one of the things that I went to Stephanie and I said, I'm seeing this in my experience with your mid-littles class right now in class. And it was not about not respecting me, it was about not respecting the personal space of each other. And I said, and the idea that they were comparing themselves to one another really in a habitual way. And that always puts on red flags for me, because our big golden rule is you may talk about all of your accomplishments and your achievements and really shine that light. You may not compare yourselves to others, because in an individualized approach, that's counterproductive. It is not in the best interest of the whole child, nor is it in the best interest of the child sitting next to them. And so I fight that whenever I see that habit forming, and it can tend to happen at the beginning of a school year with new dynamics. They're getting to know one another, but it is a form of disrespect to compare yourself constantly with the people around you, and it was going on. And so I went to Stephanie and I said, how do you feel about it? I mean, I know you see this on a daily basis. She was in agreement. I see it. I'm talking to them about it. You advocated very clearly to me that it was an issue that you had already addressed. And she didn't, and I said, you're doing a beautiful job. Can I help? Can I go in? Because having children of my own, being a little bit older, and then being somebody that they only see once a week and they kind of get really excited to see, I thought, well, maybe I could kind of drive that home. And so I just sat them down and I said, it wasn't a lecture really, but it was like, does this make you feel good or bad? And they were like, bad. Well, stop doing it.
Right.
Basically, it's a very simple, easy message. You don't have to overanalyze it. You don't have to make it a big deal. Stop doing it. It's disrespectful to one another, and you have to learn and work with each other every day. Please show each other respect. Do not compare yourself to others. Please toot your own horn all day long. We love to hear that. We love to hear that you are really proud of this. But please do not then turn to your friend and say, I did it and you didn't.
Well, I
You know,
think
that's-
Stacey's right in saying that maybe that had a lot to do with the beginning of the year, and they were getting back in the groove and reminding themselves of what we do and do not do when we're in the classroom. And we just started our differentiated spelling, and so some of the kids have one spelling list and some of them have another one, and I didn't know quite how that would go over. And I was blown away today they were all sitting at one big table, and that half have one list and half have the other, and they know that so-and-so has this one and so-and-so has this one, but it was in no way, shape, or form a contest. So I mean, they get those lessons and they learn from them, and it's just incredible to see how they grow as little people.
And that goes along, self-respect, teaching them self-respect translates into respecting the adults in their life and the children in their lives, and that's huge. I mean, we have friends, very close, close friendships that, of course, they fight occasionally, and they'll do something, and I had to navigate one last week, and it was, you really just showed some very serious disrespect to your very best friend, and you have to sometimes draw that out and say what it is, and say, I'm not angry with you, but I am going to point this out to you and tell you that's just not okay. We don't do that here.
And
It's
then
not
that in turn
acceptable.
can go into disrespect to
Yes.
the parents
Yes.
and to the teachers. Like, you can make a choice, Mr. Wyatt, but then there's a point where you don't talk
There's
back
no more
to
choice
me.
in it.
I want
Right?
to say
Yeah.
very strongly, Sambert, is there even a shred of disrespect allowed in this building? You'd be the one to.
Yeah. I try, but
Truthfully, sure.
Which which I didn't think there was. I was,
Yeah,
you know,
no, that's a good
which is,
question.
it's just a, you know.
I want to speak to that because it's one of the things that I am probably most proud of. Every single time we go on a field trip, every place we go, the Bean has commented. Most recently it was Monday, and the janitor at the Treasury Center said to Bruce Hoffman, who told me, "We love it when your school is here. Everybody is so respectful, and it's a completely different feeling than any kid group we have." And it didn't surprise me at all. And then another place you see that, and that just kind of boils down to, I think, every single one of the ladies here,
Right.
and that's the reason they are here, genuinely cares about every aspect that is best for each child. Respect is certainly on that list, along with making choices. I think that's just infiltrates our being, right? I mean, you don't talk back, and maybe he's letting it out for you, which
Well, I'm like,
we
well,
prefer.
why-
We prefer.
me or
He's
he's
perfect.
arguing about
By the
everything.
way, he is perfect. But I encourage you guys.
That's fine. I'll be dealing with it my whole life.
There are moments like lunchtime. I think I said this last year, and where you walk in and everybody's got their freedom moment on. But really, when these children are in class listening to their teacher, it is some of the most incredible engagement. I think we're probably seeing more here than anywhere in the nation. These little kids, they are looking right at their teachers. They are absorbing as much as their little minds can, and that has everything to do with respect. They respect what they're getting from their teachers. They respect the moment. They respect their learning time. I'm so proud of them. Sometimes they blow me away. And the other day I had a little meeting with the older kids, and not one peep, not one movement. They were listening and responding respectfully. They're getting to the point where they don't even need to raise their hands anymore. Just like we are right now. Do we have to raise our hands? No, we're listening to each other, and I was so eager to start saying this. I didn't want to interrupt. Or raise my hand. I almost did raise my hand.
I've seen a few people.
You started to, and then you're like, no, this is so dorky.
But that's real life skill too. They're getting there, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that is happening at a scale that probably no school.
Right. Well, you see the opposite, I feel like.
Yeah.
In,
It was regular.
It was
I would agree.
so cool. I teach snowboarding up at CBMR, sometimes on the weekends, and a couple of the snowboard instructors said that they loved our school the best because our kids are the most respectful. They listen the best, and they always say thank you afterwards. And that was just really cool for me, because when you work up at the mountain, you can get some punks. And so to have that come back was really, really cool. And
I've heard the same thing from the mountain. Yeah.
When we travel across the country, like, we campgrounds and stuff, our kids, they're so funny because they'll end up picking their friends, and like, those group of kids are nice, those group of kids are mean. No, I'm serious. I don't, they're not glad over popcorn, they're mean. Alright, whatever. It's kind of funny.
We had a new neighbor in our neighborhood that came in, just two small kids, and she had her kids over at the park one day in this fall, when all of our kids came over and just mass, and she asked, she said, wait, your kids go to what is Orsch? And I was just telling her about it. She said, they seemed different. And all she could say was, artsy, I guess. They seemed artsy. I thought it was really great. Yeah. It says a lot.
Yeah.
Artsy. Yeah.
Jackie, can you touch just real quick on failure and being allowed? I mean, we talk so much about holding them so high in esteem. What about being allowed to fail, being allowed to learn life lessons, and not being protected from it?
That's the real world.
Yeah. Well, that's a hard balance, Kelly. I really struggle with that one because my instinct is to protect. And here's and I spent a lot of time thinking about it, so I actually have a fairly succinct philosophy on that. And it actually, it serves, it serves the social side, it serves a large range in their lives. And it boils down to the fact that bad things happen in life. Bad things happen accidentally. You fall, you bump your knee, you get broken up with, you get a stress fracture. You can't find your keys for an hour and a half.
Can't find your earphone.
These are all things in my own life. Somebody tries to start your car and the battery is dead. You know? Bad things happen in life. And I'm really starting to develop the philosophy through this experience and the over-analytical thinking that I'm cursed with, that the more goodness we have and the more support we have for those things that we do have control over, the better armed we are for the things we don't. And I'm seeing that in my own children, I'm seeing that in our students, I'm seeing that in my own life, finally allowing myself to absorb some of the wonderful things. So I guess my answer to you is we don't need to create or overly allow bad situations so that children learn the hard way. The hard way is out there already. And I personally feel like the more support and the more stable they are emotionally from their friendships, from their teachers, from their family lives, the better prepared they are for those inevitable negative things out there. So that's kind of how I operate the school. That's kind of how I operate my interactions with your kids. You know, if I can step in and help, I'm going to. But I will say that I won't step in if I think that that child actually needs that lesson. Does that make sense? I'm not going to save you. I'm not going to do your work for you. And I'm not going to make it cushy just so that you don't, you know, so that there's skill in having to do it yourself, yes. So it's, I don't know if that answers
And
that
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think there's some failures are due to apathy, not caring enough about getting something done because it just, you know, they just don't want to. It's harder for us to swoop in and stop those kinds of failures. Do you know what I mean? That's a lesson that they have to learn, and I won't necessarily always try to make that easier for a child. I will tell that child, you know, you really didn't try your hardest. And when you approach a failure like that, honestly with the child, you know, and you actually take an interest in why did you let this happen? You know, I'm on your side. I'm going to ask you some questions, and we're going to get to the point of why this failed. You don't immediately swoop in and take responsibility for the failure and be that protective, but you do try to help them question it and wonder,